Good morning to you, Guyanese in Guyana and around the world. Happy Wednesday to you. Uh, it's another wonderful day. Today it's a very, very good day here in New York. Um, the temperature is not very bad. It's right now 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to be heading up. Going to be heading up to a decent number, but then we've got showers coming down later on in the day. And overnight, uh, in Guyana, by contrast, the temperature is currently 79 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're expecting light showers. It's gonna be very, very decent as well. It's even though it's 79 degrees, they're saying it feels like 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and a wonderful day. Lots of things have been happening. Last night, I commented on some of the issues that are in the news, both in Guyana and overseas here in the USA, because we've lost some time to my getting myself together and setting up and so on. We don't want to dilly dally too much, but we want to introduce our guest for today, who is no other than the one and only Honorable Member of Parliament, Ms. Amanza Walton Desir. Um, I don't know what some people see when they look, but when I look, I see a beautiful young politician who is also an attorney at law. And I deliberately make those comments based on some of the wild, crazy comments that are being made. And some of them came to me in my messenger inbox in the spam section, and I was reviewing the spam section yesterday, and I saw some of those um, crazy comments which have prompted me to make that particular statement. Um, MP Desir, good morning and welcome back to the Introspective Show.
Good morning, Mr. Burke. Thank you for having me.
You
And
know,
good
you're always
morning
welcome.
to
This is
our listeners at home and in the diaspora.
very well, and I know that some people look forward to seeing and hearing from you whenever you appear to speak on this platform or any other platform. Um, I wanna throw a few dicey questions at you, and I know you're competent to treat with them. Firstly, they say charity begins at home, and therefore I'd like to start by showing some love to the brothers and sisters at home, in particular this morning, our brother and your colleague in the Parliament, your Chief Whip, Mr. Christopher Jones. Um, I have observed, and I'm looking at today's Chronicle. It says AG appeals CJ's judgment on parliamentary secretaries. So it would appear to be as though at one time the CJ is a good friend of the government and the party in government, and at other times she's not. There are times when they would question her decision, and there are times when it just goes unquestioned. So yesterday's ruling indicated that the parliamentary secretaries who were appointed by the PPP after they took office are illegally seated. And now we're seeing that the AG, Mr. Nandlal, is appealing that judgment. What is your perspective on this whole situation, on the ruling and the AG's appeal of the decision?
Well, look, thanks for the question, Mr. Burke. I believe that this whole situation is really indicative of the mindset of the PPP, that they are willing to use and respect the court's rulings when it suits them, and at other times not. What is interesting for me, or what was interesting for me, was to see the manner in which the Attorney General contorted himself to try to make the argument that the court should not follow its own decision in a case that he won some years ago against the APNUAFC in relation to uh, the membership of, it was then Winston Felix and Keith Scott. And so the facts, as we say in law, are on all fours. And of course, we understand the principle of precedent in the practice of law. And so for the AG to try to contort himself and to disagree with himself and to try to find some avenue to distinguish his case that he won from the present case that he was trying to defend. It was interesting. I believe that we have to view it with the derision that it deserves. The facts are that they are in the parliament illegally and they ought to be removed. Interesting that he should appeal it, because the decision that he was seeking to um, have the court distinguished was a decision of the Court of Appeal, the very Court of Appeal that he is now appealing to. So it'll be interesting. I anticipate that it will be thrown out again, and that the two members will have to vacate their seats in the National Assembly.
Um, it is not the general practice. I remember in the immediate post elections period when I think it was for the first time Mr. Mark Benshop was interviewing attorney Darren Wade. He asked him for an opinion on uh, the competence of the CJ to function in that capacity. Where when in the view of Mr. Benshop, she was compromised, and Mr. Wade indicated that um, it would be improper for him as a serving member of the legal fraternity to be critical of the Madam CJ. Uh, I don't know if I can put you in a civil position and ask if not the Madam CJ, if with all that has transpired during the immediate post-elections period, there is any hope that the judges who will sit or who sit on the appellate court have the ability to be impartial and make judgment based on the law.
I will say this. I know the Chief Justice to be a very competent woman. There's no if or but about her competence. And I will say that it is my view that as long as the law is followed, the elections petitions should yield a result favorable for the AP and UAFC. And those are just my thoughts on the matter. As it relates to the issue of public opinion and its impact on judges in terms of decision making, this is why principles such as stare decisis are important. And it brings us back to the case that we just discussed with Anil Nandlal. This is why
Mhm.
certainty in the law is important. This is why precedent is important. Simply because we acknowledge that judges are human beings as well. And so social issues will have an impact. But at its core, you have to have a situation where the law is certain and sure in its application. And it is that principle that allows for decisions to be made in keeping with previously decided cases, etc. So that is my take on the issue of the question that you raised. I will reiterate, it is my view that as long as the law is followed, the results will yield a victory for the APN UAFC.
And that that presumption is based on precedents. You're saying. I'm just wanted to reiterate that because
as
some
as
people like
well
to.
as as well as having reviewed the arguments of both sides. um the matter is sub judice, and so I wouldn't want to say too much. But in the APN UAFC camp, I could say that we are very, very optimistic about Monday. And of course, you always leave room for disappointment. And we have to be prepared for the long struggle, because should any party not have a favorable result, they do have the option to appeal. And so I think we have to strap up ourselves and gird up our loins for the long haul. The PPP is not going to keel over and give in.
Um, I like a number of persons are one. I'm wondering rather whether the statement issued by the U.S. Department of State in relation to police misconduct in Guyana has any bearing on the, well, what appears to be a change of attitude on the part of some members of the legal fraternity. Again, I don't want to put you in any uh, unorthodox or compromising position as it relates to a practicing member of the bar, but from a layman's perspective, if you were to offer an opinion, do you see anything that bears on the conduct? Because um, you made mention of the fact that once the law is followed, then some outcomes can be predicted based on the arguments presented and so on. But I recall, and many Guyanese would recall, that a lot of arguments were presented during the immediate post-elections period that were consistent, well, appeared to be consistent with the law, and yet the results that were handed down were
Mhm.
not, in our opinion, and in the learned opinion of some legal luminaries who opined at the time, consistent with the laws of Guyana. Do you figure that this has any bearing? The statement issued has any bearing on the current conduct of some members of the legal fraternity?
Not only the current, not only those statements issued, but Mr. Burke, let's be clear. We would be naive to think that geopolitics and geopolitical issues do not have a bearing on um, the decisions that courts make. In an ideal world, it should not, but the reality is that it does. And it brings to mind the fact that one of the first um, things that we saw the Biden administration tackling was the reversal of sanctions that were imposed by the Trump administration on judges of the International Court of Justice. And I think because it was understood that it is understood by them that you cannot purport to have a judiciary that operates under threat. It is inimical to justice. And so I think during the elections period, for example, those when Mike Pompeo announced visa restrictions on all persons who he perceived to be threatening democracy, and they remediate families, those edicts do not help.
Hmm.
They do not help. And so let us not be naive to think that foreign policy, geopolitical issues would not impact the judiciary. And so I think it has a role to play. Um, and certainly it is in the interests of the US, I believe, to allow the legal system to operate unfettered, free from threats, because that really, at the end of the day, is the only balance that we have in terms of regulating a democratic society.
Brilliantly put. I share the same opinion. just so it's put on the record. I want to move on to the the continuing legal crisis in Guyana, and look specifically this time. You know, it is appalling, it is mind-boggling to reflect on statements made by the PPP administration when they took office. Statements that were intended to um, demean the character of persons who were demitting office at the time, either in ministerial capacity or um, some senior governmental capacity. They spoke of um, large salaries, and they spoke of supposed fraudulent activities on the part of those officials, but they have not come up with any hardcore evidence of wrongdoing and anything to support those alleged frauds. We are noticing that they have had cause within a few short months to send one of their own home. The gentleman, the young man who they had asked or installed or placed to manage the Guy oil facility in Guyana. And the allegation is that he would have engaged in some activity that would have ensured that he got or he stood to benefit from some $600 million in kickbacks from some deal. What is your position, or what is your perspective on that as a member of parliament and one who the said administration sought to um, destroy your character by making similar allegations of large sums of monies being thrown at you and all kinds of these things?
Well, look, I will say this. Everything that I have worked for, and every salary that I have drawn, I am competent to receive and qualified to receive. And so I make no apologies to anyone for my earning capacity. I have worked, I have studied, and I have acquitted myself as a professional in a manner that enables me to command a proper salary. Um, and so I have no apologies for that. I think the trouble that the PPP has is that they are an inherently corrupt cabal. And so it is a case where we have to understand that they cannot help themselves. I think I think we ought not to be surprised anymore at these matters. The nature of a snake is that it will bite you. The nature of a scorpion is that it will sting you. The nature of the PPP is corruption. And so this is to be expected. And I think this is just the first of many. And I think this has just come to the fore because the persons involved chose to make it public. There's so many other corrupt deals and transactions happening that um, it will shock you. And so, I am not surprised because this is the nature of the PPPC. They are inherently corrupt. What is damning, I think, in this regard is that they relieved a very, very competent female in the person of Miss Renata, I think Exeter was her name, who ran Guy Oil in a manner that caused it to become, one of the model corporations in Guyana. And what was their first line of business when they assumed government? They terminated her services. So they're not interested in competence. They're interested in placing persons in positions that they can control, that they know are corrupt, and that they know that they can get the requisite kickbacks for. So I'm not surprised.
But this is this is kind of a shifting from the norm because, like you said, the PPP is known to have some nefarious characters in in the circle, and they are known to be kickback generals. I mean, I have been in the system, and I know what obtains. I mean, there's nobody who would have uh, gotten a contract under the PPP administration in the past years, and they were not expected to give a kickback, or if it's not deemed a kickback, it is paid up front, so that it might not be deemed as a kickback, but I think in some instances they call it some kind of fee. But it is known that that is something that does not go into the government coffers. It is
Right.
divided for these guys, for I don't know if it's the entertainment allowances or what, but this is a moving away from the norm. Is there any indication as to why, apart from somebody exposing it? There are several things that were exposed before and they took no action against the people who were involved. Is there anything that has prompted them to deal condignly with this gentleman and push him out of the system?
Well, all that I am aware of is what has appeared in the media. And that is that he was asked to proceed on administrative leave, and whilst on leave, he tendered his resignation. And so I am unaware as to whether there are any issues behind the scenes. But, for me, it is just really indicative of the fact that they prefer corruption over competence. They prefer to have people who are corruptible rather than people who are competent and people with integrity functioning in these organizations.
So the hard question now: does the parliamentary opposition intend to pursue this matter to ensure that there is some criminal penalty that is brought to bear once the allegation bears true?
Well, we have to await the investigations and see how these investigations are handled. Guyana is a state corporation, and so the people of Guyana have a vested interest. And so we will be looking very closely to see how this issue is handled.
Okay. That being said, I want us to look briefly, or well, I mean, to whatever extent it is needed, is necessary, at the health situation in Guyana. The government has indicated to us that they have vaccinated some, I think, 81,000 plus persons in Guyana to date, and they have disclosed that uh, they have now received, or they are now in receipt of a further 83,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. The government has also taken pains to indicate to the Guyanese people that scientists, I'm not sure which scientists, and I'm not trying to cast a negative, um, uh, you know, view of this whole vaccine, but they're saying that scientists have indicated that the Sputnik vaccine is 90, let me get the figure, 97.6% effective, uh, which would which would give me the impression that the indication is that these vaccines, or this particular the Sputnik vaccine, is a whole lot more effective than the vaccines manufactured by the Americans. Is there any system in place that um, is designed to verify? Because I remember there was some bit of confusion with regards to the vaccine that was received from India. One of the scientists in India came out publicly and said that while the Indian government was making the vaccine available to places like Guyana, they did not have any conclusive result, the data of which they could have used to, uh, pop up or prove the accuracy of what the people were saying in terms of the effectiveness of the vaccine. Is there any data
Mhm.
that we can rely on to verify that the Sputnik vaccine, which is being used widely in Guyana, is as effective as the Russians claim?
What I will say is this, Mr. Burke, that matter was brought to my attention, and at a personal level, I am trying to get the information on the matter so that I can make an informed decision for myself. I have not yet completed that research, and I really want to encourage, our listeners and fellow Guyanese. We live in an information age, and when it
Mhm.
comes to the issue of the vaccine and taking of the vaccine, it really is, in my view, and this is my personal opinion, it really is a personal decision that you must take given your circumstances, given the peculiarities of your um, health, your case. We were on a fan out exercise in Region 5, and I was saying to the villagers, it was in Calcutta or Litchfield, one of the two locations, that it is important that we engage our community health personnel. You may have a medic in the village, there may be a health facility in the village. And so we want to do as much research as we can at a personal level so that we are able to make an informed decision. The fact remains that it is not mandatory to have the vaccine, and therefore, I think you are allowed to do the research and weigh the pros and the cons for yourself. Because I think everybody is capable of doing that and then make an informed decision. But I have heard concerns being raised about whether the Sputnik vaccine was approved by the WHO, the World Health Organization. What I can say is that our Food and Drug Analyst Department here has indicated that it is safe for use. I myself have embarked upon a course of research for my own edification and enlightenment. So those are my thoughts on it. Everybody has a smartphone, you have Google, and you can do research and come to that conclusion for yourself.
I am happy that you have made that statement, especially in regards to people not relying on this process of being spoon fed regarding the information received, but rather propose to go and research themselves, edify themselves. Like I said last night, there was this gentleman who wanted to know in relation to this the verdict that was issued up here yesterday. Just to divert a little, he said that this is a white gentleman when he looked at this whole case and having gotten the results, he thought of himself as being extremely privileged. And when he compared the privileges that he enjoyed as against what the black people, as they call it, um, have to go through to just enjoy a little bit of what he enjoys, he thought that he needed to get himself some information so that he can know what a white man can do to help the Black Lives Matter movement. So he Googled it, got some information, and said he was going to work on it. So I'm happy that you're endorsing this whole notion of people going after information for themselves, so that when you make a decision, it is a well-informed decision rather than going after uh, these a lot of conspiracy theories that are around the world. In America, I know that there was a debate, and you spoke of geopolitics and all that earlier. The truth is, the discussions that are ongoing now are informing people. It's confusing. One set of people are saying that the Russians are having a propaganda campaign. They're waging a propaganda campaign because they would like to have their vaccines sold over and above the American made vaccines. And my mind immediately went to the competition between Coca Cola and Pepsi, things that they would say about each other's product, so as to
Mm,
get more customers. So I would endorse your recommendation for people to go and research themselves. And there must be something that would be able to inform you. But I would never say that people should not take the vaccine. My only question is regarding the accuracy of the data released as it relates to the efficacy of the vaccine. All right.
Mm.
So I would encourage as many people as possible to go take them. I myself have to go take my second dose on Friday. I have done the
Right.
Pfizer, and I'm going to continue with the Pfizer. Right?
And you would have come to that decision based on your research, your
Yeah.
assessing your health, your understanding that this is a decision that you have to make. And
Mhm.
so I think it is important that we stress to people that you have a role of self determination in this. And so it is a decision that I firmly encourage people to make after having a considered um, look at all of the information out there.
Thank you very much. I want to segue to your foreign affairs responsibility in the parliament
Okay.
for a moment. We have read in the papers, we have observed that the parliamentary opposition leader and a team met with the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Guyana. I am not sure that an
Mhm.
official statement was released to inform the Guyanese public, both at home and in the diaspora, um, as to what was discussed in that meeting that will help us to feel a little more hopeful with regards to the future of Ghana. Is there anything that you, in your capacity as the Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs, can share with us to uh, buoy us up and give us some more hope for betterment in the future in terms of our political situation?
Well, just to say that the leader of the Office of the Opposition did issue a press release on that meeting and did highlight some of the um, issues that were discussed. And so that is out there. What I can say is that as it relates to our posture and the current US ambassador, that we regard her as the representative of President Joe Biden. And it is in that context the APNUFC agreed to meet with her when the US Embassy, in fact, requested such a meeting. And so I think it is important that our people understand that from the outset. I think one of the important issues that we discussed was the resetting of Guyana's relationship with the United States. It's not a secret that the events leading after the elections and even some of those leading up have left a significant portion of the Guyanese population with some amount of anxiety as it relates
Yeah.
to the United States posture towards some of our internal issues. And so I think the meeting was a good step because it signaled the resetting, I think, of the relationship between the peoples of the United States and the peoples of Guyana. As you know, the US is one of our most long-standing allies, haven't recognized us since independence. And so it is a relationship that has to be managed very carefully. It is a friendship that has to be managed very carefully. And so I think it was a good step in the right direction for Guyana and the US. And then you would have noticed now that there is a moving away from this position of um, silence to actively promoting dialogue with the opposition, APNU AFC. Village Voice would have reported the statement in which they indicated that there is no room for gridlock. I think there is an understanding. This is my opinion. I think there is an understanding, given the 9 months of the APNU of the PPPC so far,
Mhm.
that they're not good for Guyana, and I think we are seeing turning of the tide as it relates to our allies and our friends in the diplomatic arena. That is my personal take on the situation.
Um, that is a bit. That's a little. It sounds kind of encouraging, but I was unofficially informed that in regard to the role that the former Canadian ambassador to Guyana played in the whole elections fiasco. To use the term that were the words that were uttered to me, she is fortunate to still be in the diplomatic corps. And as far as is known, her assignment to Barbados was viewed by a lot of people in Canada as a demotion rather than something to help her credentials. I'm not sure that that's the official position, but we have, as Ghanaians, have been calling for her to be removed from Guyana. And I don't know if it was because of the fact that her time was due, or the Canadian Prime Minister uh, having heard our cries and our desires, giving heed to that and granting favorably. We have also been asking for Ambassador Lynch to be removed from Guyana. Has there been a shift? Oh, sorry, I should ask that. I don't know if that was the official position of the opposition, the officer of the opposition, the leader of the opposition, and the parliamentary opposition as a whole. But that has been the cry of Guyanese. Has that ever been broached with the authorities, the US authorities, by the parliamentary opposition? And if it has been, what has been the response?
I will say this: the official position of the opposition
I don't know if you can hear me. Um, if you can hear me, Desir, we're seeing that you're responding, but we're not hearing you. We don't know why.
Mr. Burke, are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I am not sure at which point you stopped hearing me. So if you could
We
tell
didn't hear
me,
any
that'd
of
be
your response.
helpful. This is on the matter of our view of Ambassador Lynch.
Yes, we didn't hear anything at all.
Okay, no. So I was saying that our official position is that until such time as she is no longer the ambassador to Guyana, Ambassador Lynch is the representative of the people of the United States and of the new Biden Harris administration. And in that light, we will accord her the courtesies that that I think we are aware that there are certain conventions which govern the conduct of a diplomat in a state to which they are assigned. And so we are of the firm view that her being recalled, removed, reassigned, or otherwise is the purview of the of President Biden's administration. And certainly we will respect whatever decision they choose to make. We have indicated, like I said before, United States, the need for a resetting of the relationship. And so I think that message has been delivered loud and clear. But the nature of the engagement and the tone of the engagement, I remain very, very optimistic that we are going to see a much more favorable role being played in our fight to really establish true democracy in Guyana.
Wonderful. I want to piggyback on your your statement there, and to ask a question that is kind of tantalizing, but it also bears on your foreign ministry oversight assignment
You
in the
have a
parliament.
way with these questions, Mr. Burke.
I promise I should not. I promise it should not put you in any trouble. I'm just trying to seek clarification here. Um, what is the opposition's interpretation? Because I don't think that we had. Well, at least I did not hear, and some people are still speculating all around the place. What is the opposition, the parliamentary opposition, that is, position or interpretation of the Department of State's statement, which indicated that the uh, Ali administration, or the President Ali in particular, was installed as against President Granger, who was elected um, to the office of the presidency. I was told that this
Yeah.
is diplomatic language. How should we interpret the two terms being used on the two occasions by the same department?
Well, I will answer it this way by asking the question: what prevented them from saying that he was elected?
Well, again, like I said, I was told that is diplomatic
So,
language.
exactly. And so in international relations, the choice of words matter. And not fool ourselves into thinking that this was just nonchalantly placed there. You recall that the UAFC administration, the opposition has maintained from the beginning that the regime was installed. And so it is very vindicating for us to see the US, I think, reflecting that position. Keep making the point, however, that more important for me is the fact that in that same report, the US State Department did not deem the elections credible. This is a matter that I researched for myself. I went to every State Department report and checked to see whenever they spoke of an election, and the description credible was there. When it
Mhm.
came to the national and regional elections of March 2nd, 2020, the description of credible was omitted. In the next line, however, in describing the local government elections, they said it was fair, transparent, and credible.
Hmm.
And so it is important recalled that Mr. Keith Lowenfield, under a previous administration of the US, the Trump administration, came in for significant criticism when he said that the results of the elections did not meet the standards
Yeah.
of transparency and credibility. And so it is important, notwithstanding he was compelled by the Chief Justice to use the tabulated results of the recount as the basis for the declaration of the elections. He stated the PPP and their supporters can
Yeah, we got most of what was said. A little bit of it was distorted because I guess the weather is playing a role in the distortion of and interruption of the communication. But we got the gist of what was said. Um, just so that we can clarify, these statements were not made about. There has been absolutely no mention or any uh, anything that would indicate or assume or cause somebody who read those statements to assume that the APNU in any way, shape, or form attempted to rig or rigged the last elections. The only thing that was said was that the current government was installed as against when President Granger won. They said that he was elected. So just to give some clarity to the whole thing, because some people are still trying to push this idea that that statement was made because with regards to the election not being credible, because the APNU tried to rig the election. I have not seen anything that said that, and I consider those statements to be
no. Well,
unfounded.
not only
Yes,
unfounded, this is the type of rhetoric that the PPP see and their trolls engage in when they have lost the battle of facts. And that is all it is. And so I pay those statements no mind. Fact remains that Irfan Ali and his administration were installed on the basis of results that were not credible. And there's no amount of twisting and turning attacks and personal attacks and foolishness that could be said that changes that. And the sooner the PPP and their supporters digest that fact, the better off they will. I'm sure they're twisting themselves into knots, trying um, to distort the facts. And so I keep saying the fact remains that in those elections, dead persons, votes were recorded in the names of dead persons of the
sure.
jurisdiction on elections day. Votes
Mhm.
over close to 12,000
Yeah, the weather's playing a game with us today, unfortunately. Um,
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you again. I was just saying that the weather's playing a serious game with us today. I don't know. um, we just missed the
My my
last piece.
internet, my internet, my internet is on full strength, so I'm not sure what is the cause of the disruption.
That's what I'm saying. I guess it's the bad weather. It's just the weather, like a TV station will be broadcasting and at their end everything as well, but somewhere up there in the atmosphere the signal is interrupted. I guess that's what's happening with us right
Right, right. No, but I just wanted to drive home the point to the PPP and their trolls, etc. That Irfan Ali is in government. He's installed into government on the basis of seriously flawed results. And there's no calling that you would SOPs, the SOPs. He's not in office on the basis of SOPs. He's in office on the basis of statements of recount which contain hundreds of thousands of votes that GCOM itself said it couldn't validate.
now.
So
So
don't
true,
bring the
so true.
foolishness. Keep that foolishness for people who refuse to allow their mouth to operate without the benefit of their intellect. It certainly will not hold water here.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I'm observing that there's a battle that is unfolding between the registrar of the courts and the commissioner of police and the DPP. Um, how significant is the denial on the part of the registrar of the access, denials of access to these SOPs and SOR, which the Commissioner of Police and the DPP are requesting to determine whether or not they have a valid case to put against or to present against the persons who they would have charged with electoral fraud.
The registrar is doing her job, and she must be commended for such.
Okay.
And that is important. I very often say that these are sideshows that the PPPC continues to engage in to bolster their supporters. The fact remains, Mr. Burke, that we went back into the boxes. We know what happened. It is not hidden from the sight of anybody. We know that people vote. We know on the lower East Coast there was massive fraud where Anil Nandlal was distributing ID cards. We know all of these things. And so this thing about SORs and all of that are purely diversionary tactics being employed by the PPPC to distract from the fact that they were installed into office based on fraudulent votes.
Mm-hmm.
That is all it is. And so I would encourage, particularly the APN, to just ignore the idiocy and allow for sound reason to prevail, because it is idiocy to engage in behavior that the recount didn't happen. We are no longer in the realm of supposition. We know that you had 49 ballot boxes without documents. This is not what the AP and UAFC has said. This is what GCOM has said.
Hmm.
And so it continues to amuse me that people believe that this thing about calling for SORs and so on somehow absolves them from the fact that they are installed based on fraud. And in the words of their Attorney General, fraud is fraud.
Of course, of course. I wanna hasten on to as we prepare to wrap up. Um, coming back to the local law enforcement scenario, um, a well-respected senior superintendent of police is now under the gun of the PPP administration. Allegedly, the president um, asked or has instructed the commissioner of police and the DPP to charge the lady, the distinguished lady, with fraud to the extent that she would have stolen or misappropriated in the first instance 80 million Guyana dollars, being the property of the government of Guyana through the Guyana Police Force. And then in the second instance, which tells me that they don't know what they're really doing, 300 million Guyana dollars. And it is who's heading the SOCU, but I want to feel that he's just being used as a scapegoat if this allegation is true. Um, what plan or plans does the political opposition or the parliamentary opposition have to confront the government on these targeted character assassinations as they continue to roll out in there? And it seems as though that there's no end to it. Everybody is under the gun. I also want to seek your opinion on this allegation that is now being thrown at Dr. George Norton?
I will say that there is no doubt, and it's obvious to everybody by now, that the PPPC is in a concerted, is coordinating a concerted effort to attack Afro-Ghanaian professionals and APNU AFC supporters. And let me say that this approach has to be twofold. For some reason, I'm getting a general feedback. I'm not sure if you're having the same experience.
No, I'm not.
We do this because of a love of country. I know that there are a bunch of people who believe that, oh, as an MP, particularly as an opposition MP, you make a lot of money. That is not the case. We are paid what could be virtually considered a stipend, and that is it. And so every paper that we present, every time we stand and speak, it is because we have done the research ourselves. We've had to do the work of ourselves. And so it is important that the people and our supporters understand that we do this, and I could speak for myself, I do this out of love of country.
Mm.
There's no financial benefit in it for me. I left a very lucrative career. And so it is important that when you interact with us, that you give us the grace of understanding that we are doing this out of love of country.
Thank you very much. I often say, just before I allow you to go, I often say that we need to see more uh, signs of um, patriotism from Guyanese. Like I often say, you go to any function in the United States of America, there's not a function you can go to without seeing a few US flags being flown. And people are quick to say to their leaders and their representatives, their military, personnel, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you. I think that uh, 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 enhances the spirit of patriotism. But the absence of that in Guyana, I feel, lends to this whole notion of people just doing this thing for self-aggrandizement, and we don't
but
care.
but Mr. Burke, we are supposed to be ending the show for a while now, but I think you have hit upon a point that is important. That manifestation of the lack of patriotism that you're seeing is a direct result of the PPP 23 years in office. I had the good fortune of being in school in primary school under the PNC. And so I will say this, there's not one national song that I do not know.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a time where Monday morning assembly, you had to sing national songs. Friday afternoon national assembly, you had to sing national songs. And so when you have that sense of national pride and embedded in you, it's difficult to let it go. It's difficult, but that is the role of leadership. That is the role of government. So for me, when you sing songs like from Pacaraima Peaks of Power to
Yes.
Quarantine Sands, our children pledge each faithful hour to guard Guyana's lands,
Mhm.
to foil the shock of rude invaders who'd violate our earth, and cherish and defend forever the state that gave them birth. When those things are in you, you have very little tolerance for diplomatic overreach. You have very little tolerance for interference in our international affairs because we understand that this is our experiment in self-determination. This is us brought together by diverse circumstances, slaves, indentured laborers, forging a new Guyana. And so that has to be in your belly.
Yeah.
And if it isn't in your belly, you're wasting time. And you will get into it for the opportunism. You'll get into it because I suppose once you're in government, there's money to be made. But that sense of this is Guyana, this is ours, is an inside job. And leadership and government has the responsibility of cultivating that in you.
Hmm. Critical point. Thank you very much for expanding on it. You know, what more can be said? We've said it all. We've heard it all. You've said it all. We can go on all day, but I know you've got to go, and I have to go get some rest. Thank you so much.
I do. We have a hectic day ahead, but it
I
will be
know.
a productive one by God's grace.
Thank you so much, and God's continued blessings on you and your household,
Thank
and the other parliamentarians as you move ahead, and take Guyana forward with you. Have a wonderful day.
I will convey your regards to them because we meet later in the day.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bless you. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, people. As is usual, the one and only Honorable Member of Parliament, Amanza Walton Desir, like she said, they're saying all kinds of crazy things about her. I went into my messenger box yesterday, and I for the first time, I saw some ridiculous messages from some real unscrupulous characters uh, coming to describe Member of Parliament Desir, just mischievous, and I just dealt with them in in a condign manner, dealt with them with dispatch, and I dispatched them too, never to come again. We're grateful for the service of people like Member of Parliament Amanza Walton Desir, and like you heard her say, they have a very busy schedule today. Yet she found it possible to carve a huge bit of her time for today and dedicate it to the edifying of Guyanese people at home and in the diaspora. This is what this program is all about. In perspective, we bring everything and put it in perspective, regardless of what it is. Local news, international news, as long as it has a bearing on Guyana Guyanese, we put it in perspective so that we can all be on the same page. We can all know what those who are in the know already know. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to your company again on Friday morning when we have in our studio once again, God's willing, uh, the one and only Mr. Lincoln Lewis. I see the name is incorrectly spelled there, but typos happen. We had a wonderful week so far. Ms. Cathy Hughes on Monday. Today we had the company of MP Amanza Walton Desir, and on Friday, hopefully all things being equal, we'll have a chat again with Mr. Lincoln Lewis. Please remember, drop a mite in the box there. We've added the Venmo handle so that you can drop your little thing in there. Those persons who've been asking for us to create a Venmo account, we have that there. So it's at in underscore perspective, at in underscore perspective. You can send your little donation there as well. We want to thank all those who've been supporting us so far. Today, Mr. Weeks has informed me that one of the bills is due, and I shall proceed to have that taken care of immediately as we get off air. But those bills have to be paid, or else we're not going to have the service that we have. You see how uncomfortable it can be when we have these interruptions. But that's this today's interruption is nothing to do with us. We believe it's the weather. We couldn't do anything about that. But insofar as our bills are concerned, we'd like to take care of them um, in a very comfortable way and timely manner. So we ask you to continue to drop your little bits and pieces, your little mites and tokens in any one of these here, the buy productions at or byproductions at gmail.com. That's for PayPal, Cash App, $ Bloco B2P, and Venmo at in underscore perspective. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day. God's richest blessings to you. I'll see you tonight. Don't forget, you need to be on tonight on the Right to Work something for the gospel hits parade. You can't only want to be there when we have the second largest my church. This is not about telling you which church to go to, but I just want you to be comfortable in knowing and acknowledging the presence of God. So we share our gospel music tonight on the Right to Work. So please join us. Have a wonderful day. God's blessing. Until then, I'm out.
So we're not in the realm of supposition anymore. We know for a fact that people have voted. We know for a fact that people who are not in the jurisdiction would have voted. We know for a fact that there are 47 ballot boxes without documents. These are facts that are incontrovertible. It's not up for debate. We're not unsure about these things. And so I think the only reason that we ended up at a petition was that the court recognized that while everybody in fact recognized that whilst we have discovered these anomalies and irregularities, the mechanism through which we could address them is an elections petition. So it does not negate the fact of the findings. It does not negate the fact that the PPP has not been able to refute these allegations. And so even with this throwing out of the petition, temporarily I would say, because I believe we have very, very strong prospects in terms of appeal, the PPP has not convinced anybody that they have not gotten there by illegitimate means. Because the very mechanism through which we were going to receive, as it were, the imprimatur of the court to say that these actions were illegal, it is the same mechanism through which the PPP could have acquitted themselves of these charges. And so these facts remain, and this is what I want to encourage our people. Don't be disheartened by this. The facts are the facts.